Hello everyone. I'll try and keep this quick given it's the last one of the day. So my name is Lucy Sharma. I'm part of the Bloomberg team and I'm responsible for helping investors and corporates connect. Now things are changing in that world at the moment, so I just want to explain briefly why that's happening, but also the reason why corporates have to be more proactive now in contacting investors. So the traditional corporate access model is changing. A lot of this is because of regulation. Brokers are getting paid less, their margins are getting squeezed, and company coverage is being reduced. So all looking very negative. What has stepped in, though, is the fact that technology has obviously come to the forefront, and it does mean that even if you're not getting that help from brokers, or you want more help, then there is technology around the marketplace, not just Bloomberg, but with others as well, that can help you connect with these investors and widen your shareholder base. So this is the bundled service is breaking down, so it's moving towards an unbundled service. So the broker and the buy side still pay for execution, but no longer can corporate access be paid for out of dealing commissions. It has to be paid for out of management fees now, so therefore the buy side are paying less for corporate access, if at all. And there is obviously as well a question mark as to whether or not the buy side will pay for research anymore, with more due on legislation and regulation changes in 2018. You can see here as well from the buy side that fund fees are dropping, so obviously the buy side have got less to spend. As I said, it's all uplifting stuff in my presentation. And then as well, we've got the banks making less money, so therefore we can see here that there's an estimate from some research that there's going to be a 50% drop in what the buy side will pay to the sell side or sell side services. The FCA themselves are intending to try and raise $800 million of commission that's being paid currently on corporate access just in the UK alone. Unfortunately, the result is that there's many stocks being left uncovered. Now, this is not what you want, with obviously, you want to increase your sell-side coverage. You want to get as many people noticing your company as possible. Unfortunately, a screen on the Bloomberg system, obviously I'm using Bloomberg, that's my data reference, is that there are 4,000 companies, listed companies in the US and Europe with one analyst or less. So it shows you, and as well, 133 EU-listed companies with no analyst, even though they've got a market cap greater than $500 million. So very much you really have to try and find a way to stick out, because obviously there's less help from the sell side given these reducing fees. So the traditional model used to be that the brokers would provide a high-touch service to the corporates. Now what's happening is that the key corporates are still getting that high-touch service. Unfortunately, given the reduced fees, it does mean that there's less corporates getting that. And we're having other corporates moving towards the high-tech solution. So you can see here it's less from the brokers, less research coming through, but more product and tech focus. So therefore, hopefully, we can all benefit from that. So you can now connect direct, as we all are in our personal and personal lives. You don't need to go through a broker. Now, that's not to say that we're trying to cut out the brokers. What ourselves, Bloomberg, and the other vendors are all doing is trying to infill a space which is a gap that's being widened by the fact that brokers are being paid less, and the buy side are paying less. So this is the traditional model. As I said, everything went through the broker. That's still the case for lots of situations. But now we are having brokers and corporates connecting, investors and corporates connecting directly. You can see as well on this chart that we're seeing an increased amount of non-broker providers delivering roadshows. So therefore, you're already seeing that the corporates are going to others to try and find help. The problem is, though, that even though you haven't got the brokers there delivering as much of a service as they used to, unfortunately, you still need contact. Over 60% of investors say they won't invest in a company if they have not had contact with that company. So we need to find a way around that. There's obviously as well limited resources, investments are getting more global, and everyone is investing more internationally. So how do we resolve that? The key to the presentation, obviously. That's just giving you a statistic I just told you. 60% of investors won't connect. And you can see here as well the number of institutions and assets under management. You need to find those investors, and you need to come out of your domestic space and obviously go international to try and get access to those investors and the assets under management. There is more choice than you think, though. There's a lot of investors out there. There's a lot of investors wanting to connect with companies, and certainly on the service that we provide, when we've been speaking to people, they have asked to connect with corporates that don't come out of their country, that they don't meet normally, that don't do normal roadshows. They are wanting that contact, and we try and provide a way of dealing with that. As I said, we work with brokers as well, so we're not trying to take their space, we're just trying to infill that gap. So how do you meet new investors proactively, given all that negativeness? So first of all, what you need to do is check and see who the main investors are when you're doing a roadshow into a country. Yes, if you have a standard broker list, they will let you know the top 20, 30 investors that they deal with. As I said, their client list is reduced. But you can get lots of different vendors that will produce or deliver information on who the main investors are within a country. So check who they are when you're doing a roadshow or you're doing a targeted conference call. Check as well to see what investors are increasing positions in your sector. You don't need to just look at your own holdings data, whoever provides that for you, but also as well at the holdings data of peers. So therefore see who's investing in the sector, why they're investing there, and whether or not you can capture that investment and make sure it doesn't go to one of your competitors. Obviously as well, check who owns your peers. If there's an investor that owns a big slug of someone else in your sector, why are they not investing in your company? Try and meet those investors when you're doing a roadshow. And then also as well, use knowledge to identify who the up-and-coming investors are. I have to say, you know, us at Bloomberg, we know who's splitting off, who's setting up an up-and-coming fund, who is going it alone. They might only have smaller assets under management to start with, but they can very, very quickly generate a lot of funds if they're up-and-coming, and therefore they're well worth getting to know because they can suddenly invest in your company. So use technology. That's the main thing. We believe that this can help you connect without having to pay any extra money. What we suggest is, first of all, is to access investors that you don't normally speak to, that don't know your company. So a preliminary strategic conference call is always a good one to start with, where you do an hour-long conference call with investors who are interested in doing the research on your company. Also as well, virtual meetings are increasingly becoming important. So the video meetings, if you can hook up with those, then you'll find you'll be able to meet an investor when they have the demand to see your company, rather than fit it into a roadshow which might come 9 months down the line, and obviously that investment decision might be a little bit tired by then. Connect directly through whichever client system you have. So, as I said, go through the investors and how you can find those investors, and log all meetings, and make sure you have a very good database of all your contacts. So that if something comes up, if you have a meeting and someone, an investor has asked about property, for example, within your company, or about a certain country, etc., you know exactly who to call when something new and up and coming in your results presentation, for example, comes up. You make sure you know who those investors are that have asked that certain question. Now, I've used Bloomberg because that's who I have access to, because that's our data. There's many service providers out there, so therefore I'm just trying to explain to you what you can do. So find a service provider that can produce this. So for example, on this situation here, this is investor search. I've just used a very broad investor search situation where I've looked and seen which investors are investing in Romanian financials and increasing their positions. So as you can see on the top right here, we've got 298 investors. So therefore, if I was going on a roadshow and I was going to South Africa, for example, I can tick here or click here and then find the 82 investors, if I was a financial, 82 investors that are increasing their holdings in Romanian financial stocks. That obviously is very good information to know, so you know who to target. When you have holdings data, whoever provides you with that holdings data, obviously it's very interesting and helpful to find out the institution type, the geographic location, etc., that you will get from any holdings data. What I like looking at, though, is the change versus your peers. So you can see here, you can see this one here I've done, Banco Transylvania, as an example. Apologies if anyone's here from there. But just looking at who the buyers are, but also as well versus their peers. So you can see here, actually, for example, that Fidelity is buying stock in Banco Transylvania and selling in their peers. That's interesting information to know, very valuable. More interesting, I think, is to know who's selling your stock and who's buying the rest of your sector. Those are the investors you want to see when you're out. You want to see why are they selling you, what is the situation, how can you re-educate those investors so that they come back into your company, into your story, and change that flow. And then as well, it's very important to make sure that you keep up to speed on every single meeting you have and log exactly the story, what you're having. This is actually made up because I'm not a corporate, but made up, for example, here you can see who you've been, where you've been to see, which countries you've been to. Also as well, you can tag meetings, you can analyze it, you can put your interactions in, your relationships. You can then analyze it here. As you can see on my made up situation here, the less I talk, the better the stock price goes. So that's just a silly example. But you can see then as well, you can log your calls, log who potential investors are, log who's got a property focus. And so therefore, when something comes up, as I said, that's of that topic, you can then click that tag and then know who to ring immediately. So I just want to give you a couple of case studies. The first thing I was going to suggest, as I said, was strategic teach-ins. So this is an hour-long conference call that we suggest. You do 25 minutes of a strategic download by the management, and you put that out to new investors. Now you can find these in new investors on any sort of shareholding list. On any information of investor data. You can buy those from lots of different vendors. And then you send that out. We also have systems in our at Bloomberg which log who is interested in meeting new companies, so you can get that coming back in as well. Then give us 25 minutes of strategic overview and 35 minutes of Q&A by investors. You can see then who's interested. It's a real sort of teach-in. You can get lots of companies logging in. Sometimes you even get existing investors logging in, wanting to know what new potential shareholders are asking, what's concerning them, what do they need to look at. And you can attract investors with only a very tentative interest in the stock and a very efficient use of IR time. You can obviously get quite a lot of people on one call. So to give you two case studies, we've done one with a US consumer company. This was a US company that was asked for a one-to-one with a very small investor. The US company believed that it was, they didn't want to spend a one-on-one hour call with a very small investor. We opened that up to a group, 55 investors asked to join the call, and we had new and existing investors, large and small, joining. And we ended up with a number of one-on-one meetings following up, and new shareholders joined the company. In fact, we had one company as well, a very small US company that hadn't got one shareholder based in Europe. We did a similar thing, a strategic conference call. They got their first European shareholder on the back of it by just educating investors that didn't know about them. The other thing we offer and we suggest, which everyone is loving, not immediately. People don't like doing video conference calls until they've actually done one and realise that they're not going to be on a big screen, their face is very small. But we can do a virtual roadshow from your desk. So you literally can sit at your desk. You do not need any video conferencing facilities if you use our Bloomberg system. And in this situation, a French-based corporate wanted to do a one-on-one virtual global roadshow. They didn't have the budget. They couldn't spend any extra money on traveling. They had a lot of demand across the globe, and they couldn't work out of one place to go and target. So in the end, they sat in their office, and as you can see, we started with a conference call in Sydney. These are all on one-on-ones, face-to-face meetings, albeit digitally, all the way through to the west coast of the States. Now, I'm just very quickly going to show you how easy it is, because sometimes you have to buy in video conferencing facilities. This one is literally a web link, and I'm hoping that my colleague in London is still at his desk. It's running a little bit late, so I've been trying to text him to tell him to stay. But Susanna will attain that we did get the camera working earlier. It was literally one click of a web page. And we can see him on the laptop, but not on the screen. But I'm just trying to show you how very easy it is to do. Oh, here he is. Oh, looking a bit grumpy. There he is. He's. I've pulled him out of a small conference, so I don't know if he can see us. Oh no, he's not looking. Anyway, that is how we can do a very good conference call. I'm glad he wasn't doing anything embarrassing. But it's very easy, just one click. You do not need to buy Cisco. You do not need to buy a video system. You do not need to get a separate office set up. You can literally do this. Well, we're doing it. I don't know, actually, if you can see me. But anyway, he's tapping away. We might have to close him down before he does something embarrassing. Thank you. But it's very easy. And you can do that actually from an iPhone or even an iPad, as long as you've got internet connection and a camera. Thank you. And just wanted to lastly say that investors are adapting to change. So you can see here that a lot of investors are always moving away from these physical meetings towards these virtual meetings. They're loving the fact that you can sit in your office, you do not need to move. Now, wouldn't be a presentation from a Bloomberg person without giving a little plug. And the reason why I want to just put this one on the screen is the fact that over 80% of investment decisions are made using a Bloomberg. So therefore, this is the reason why we've got involved, is because if people are already using our systems, and as I said, this is what you can get from lots of different providers. So it's not just Bloomberg, I agree, but we provide everything. So therefore, this is all part of the service of Bloomberg. You can get earnings calls. We've done them for the Bucharest Stock Exchange. You obviously have all your market data and things, but we do now get this investor connection, which is part of the package, where you can access over 450,000 investors. As I said, you can do the work yourself, looking through the systems. We also provide help. You can do this with different separate vendors, absolutely, but we're a one-stop shop. Thank you.